a very good carrier, but it could be. The choice is down to the individual aspect, the individual community, the individual problem. There is no blank sheet. There is nobody going to say, here you go, guys. You know, this is how you build a network. These are the people you need to talk to. Tick, 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 it's done. Yeah, finance, both, great. Unfortunately, the world is not that simple. So it's a case-by-case basis. It's taking those demands, taking that information, trying to provide them, whether they're commercially operated, community operated, with a solution, and then get them in touch with the people who can supply the services, who can dig the fibre, who can do the bits and bobs, that is their day job. Which means that everybody can actually get a commercial rate of return on their efforts and actually build a network. My view on it, you might disagree with it, you might want to lynch me outside, I don't care. But it's things to think about. Has anybody got any ideas, you know, from their experiences where they see things fitting in relation to these types of models? How to actually get these little enclaves of high-speed, super-fast broadband and then getting them to the real world? Has anybody actually managed to do that yet? Has anybody actually experienced that yet?
We've got experience of doing that in new builds.
Yes.
It's not existing. Existing is much harder because you have to do the dig. But the new builds, you're already digging to provide gas, electric and water. So we've got customers of ours who are doing that. They're digging for the gas, electric and water. They're adding fibre in the ground as well, putting it into our network and then providing through the play services on the back of that. So that's already happening.
It's an interesting point, that actually, because one of the areas, sort of as a country, that we're sort of very backward in terms of what's done in Europe is that, say for example in Holland, if you're building a new housing development, then you'll put in ducting as part and parcel of doing that. That's just part of the planning process. Do it. Therefore, the ducts are already in place. So when people want in the future to put fibre in, you know, your digging doesn't have to be done. And I think actually that's an area, particularly for public sector, on both a local, regional and national level, that we need to be looking at, is actually putting part of the planning process and part of the planning game is that it should just be an absolute prerequisite that ducting is put in.
Generally, that is the case. The question is the ducting the right type of ducting?
Yeah.
And what is the generic planning?
Yeah, but it's not a neutral duct system that anybody can access.
Well, it is neutral to the extent that the developer owns the duct until it's handed over to somebody else. Yeah. The issue is whether or not the developer makes a conscious decision over that and just defaults to the incumbent telco.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. I mean, this is one of the issues that we see with next generation access. Is one of the lessons to learn from copper networks is that you have certain elements of a network infrastructure which are intrinsically or naturally monopolistic by their nature, and it's to do with the cost of digging more than anything else. With a typical home, you'll have one electricity feed, one gas feed, one water feed, so you'd expect to have one fibre feed actually coming into the premises. So once that fibre's in, it creates a contestable competitive market where a whole raft of service application content providers can deliver services across that network, but the actual infrastructure itself is naturally monopolistic. And very much the view that we formed, and this is sort of based on experience with grassroots community networks, particularly wireless community networks over the last decade, is that in terms of the future, in terms of the end game of next generation access, there should be a structural separation between who owns the monopoly assets and who actually then offers services across it. And when we say structural separation, that is in the sense of it being owned in some either special purpose vehicle, community interest company, industrial product